The lights in the Great Hall of Concordia Prime had never seemed so dim. Ambassador Zethkari stood before the 12 seats of the Galactic Council, his forearms trembling slightly as he held the datapad containing the evidence. For 300 years, the Council had kept peace across 47 star systems. Now, one species threatened to destroy everything they had built. "Show them the recordings," said High Chancellor Vextar from the center seat. Her voice carried the weight of centuries, and even the youngest council members felt the gravity in her words. The holographic display flickered to life above the center of the hall. The first image showed a human vessel, small and crude by council standards, somehow managing to disable a Veltar patrol ship. The second showed 3 human mining ships working together to capture a council freight convoy. The third image made several council members gasp. "This," Zethkari said, his voice barely steady, "is the heavy cruiser Dominant Victory. It was attacked by what our intelligence believed to be human pirates using cargo haulers and mining equipment." The recording played in silence. Everyone watched as 6 human ships, none of them military vessels, swarmed around the massive council warship like insects around a dying animal. They moved in patterns that made no sense, attacking from angles that should have been impossible, using weapons that looked like they had been built in someone's garage. "The Dominant Victory was completely disabled," Zethkari continued. "The humans took everything valuable and left the crew floating in escape pods with enough supplies to survive. They even left medical aid for the wounded." "Barbarians," muttered Counselor Nexival of the Keth Dominion. "No civilized species attacks and then provides medical care. It shows they have no understanding of proper warfare." High Chancellor Vextar raised one of her hands for silence. "Continue the report, Ambassador." The display changed to show a star map. Red dots marked incidents across 6 star systems, 17 border conflicts, 3 mining disputes that had turned violent, 2 instances of human ships appearing in restricted space without any explanation of how they had gotten there. "In every case," Zethkari explained, "the humans have shown complete disregard for established boundaries, council law, and proper military procedure. They attack with inferior weapons but somehow achieve victory. They retreat when they should fight and fight when they should retreat. Our military advisors cannot predict their behavior." Councillor Kethmar of the Hegemony leaned forward. "What do we know about their military capacity?" "That is the problem," Zethkari admitted. "We know almost nothing. Our intelligence suggests they have perhaps 50 military vessels total, scattered across their colonies. But these attacks suggest better coordination than that should allow." The hall fell silent except for the soft humming of the station's life support systems. Each council member knew what this meant. For 3 centuries they had maintained peace through a simple principle: overwhelming technological superiority. When a species became troublesome, the council would demonstrate their power, and the problem would end. But humans seemed immune to intimidation. "There is only one solution," High Chancellor Vextar finally said. "We issue an ultimatum. Total cessation of all military activities beyond their home system, or we demonstrate why the Council has remained unchallenged for 300 years. The vote was unanimous. Within hours, the message was prepared and transmitted to the human territories. High Arbitrator Nexival himself would deliver it personally, aboard the diplomatic vessel Peaceful Resolution. Escorted by 12 Council warships, Admiral Sarah Chen was reviewing supply reports when the communication came through. She sat in the command chair of the U.S. Indomitable, humanity's largest warship, while her fleet conducted what the official reports called routine training exercises near the Kepler 442 system. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Torres from the communications station, "we're receiving a priority transmission on all frequencies. It's big." "Define big, Lieutenant." "The entire transmission is coming from a ship that masses about 4 times what our heaviest cruiser weighs, and it's got an escort of 12 vessels, each one bigger than the Indomitable." Admiral Chen felt a familiar tightness in her stomach. She had been expecting this for months. "Put it through." The main screen flickered and High Arbitrator Nexval appeared. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 6 eyes arranged in 2 rows across his face. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of countless worlds. "I am High Arbitrator Nexival of the Galactic Council, speaking for 47 member species and 12 sovereign governments. I address Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Systems and, through her, the entire human race." Chen gestured for her communications officer to open a channel, but she remained silent for now. The Galactic Council has observed human military activities with growing concern, Nexval continued. Your species has engaged in 17 unauthorized military actions, violated the territorial sovereignty of 6 member species, and demonstrated a complete disregard for established interstellar law. Around the bridge, Chen's officers exchanged glances. She could see the tension in their faces, but also something else. Pride, maybe, or anticipation. Therefore, Nexval said, the Galactic Council issues this ultimatum to humanity. All human military vessels will immediately withdraw to your home system. All military activities beyond the Sol system will cease permanently. You have 72 hours to comply. The screen went dark for a moment. Then Nexval reappeared. Should humanity fail to comply with this ultimatum, the Galactic Council will consider your species a threat to interstellar peace and act accordingly. Our military capacity exceeds yours by several orders of magnitude. Resistance would be futile and costly in human lives. The transmission ended. For several seconds, the bridge of the Indomitable was completely silent. Admiral, Lieutenant Torres said carefully. They're waiting for a response. Chen looked around her bridge. These people had followed her through 3 years of what the politicians back on Earth called aggressive exploration, and what everyone else called starting fights with aliens. They had never lost a battle, but they had also never faced anything like the force that was currently sitting just outside sensor range. She thought about the message she would send back to Earth, about the meetings that would happen in sterile conference rooms where people who had never been in space would debate the wisdom of defying the Galactic Council. She thought about the other fleets scattered across 6 star systems, the new shipyards that didn't officially exist, and the projects that were moving forward under names that wouldn't appear in any public records. Then she smiled. Lieutenant Torres, open a channel. Broadcast on all frequencies, maximum power. I want everyone to hear this. Channel open, Admiral. Chen stood up from her command chair and faced the main screen. When she spoke, her voice was calm and clear. High Arbitrator Nexval, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Systems. I have received your ultimatum and shared it with my fleet commanders. She paused for a moment, knowing that this transmission would reach not just the Council ships, but every human vessel within 50 light years. It would be recorded and replayed countless times in the coming days. We appreciate the Council's concern for interstellar peace, she continued. However, I'm afraid we must respectfully decline your generous offer to surrender. Another pause. In the distance, she could see the Council escort ships moving into a more aggressive formation. Please tell the Council that humanity is grateful for their attention, but we're just getting started. The transmission ended, and Admiral Chen sat back down in her command chair. Around her, the bridge crew was grinning despite the overwhelming odds they now faced. Lieutenant Torres, she said calmly, send a message to all fleet commanders. Operation Wildfire is now active, and get me a channel to Earth Command. I think it's time to let them know about our little secret. In the depths of space, 12 Council warships began powering their weapon systems, while in the shadows of nearby asteroids, 37 human vessels waited for orders that would change the galaxy forever. War Commander Tixlan had fought in 17 campaigns across 9 star systems. He had commanded fleets that brought entire species to their knees and enforced Council law on worlds that thought themselves beyond reach. But as he studied the intelligence reports about humanity's military capacity, he felt something he had not experienced in decades: doubt. These numbers cannot be correct, he said to his intelligence officer, a thin Kethri with nervous habits. 50 ships total? Primitive weapons? No significant orbital defenses around their homeworld? The data comes from our best sources, War Commander, the officer replied, fidgeting with his datapad. Human military technology appears to be approximately 200 years behind Council standards. Their largest warship mass is less than one of our escort frigates. Tixlan stood in the command center of the Council dreadnought Absolute Authority, surrounded by tactical displays showing his strike force. 50 ships, including 3 heavy cruisers and 8 dreadnoughts. It was overwhelming force by any reasonable measure, certainly enough to handle a primitive species with 50 outdated warships. Very well, he decided. We proceed with the original plan. A demonstration of force at their primary military installation should be sufficient to end this nonsense. The intelligence had identified the orbital platforms around Mars as humanity's main military stronghold, 3 space stations and perhaps a dozen defensive platforms according to the reports. Tixlan's force could reduce them to debris in minutes. What the intelligence reports had not mentioned was Captain Maria Santos and the Third Fleet. Santos stood on the bridge of the UES Resolute, watching her tactical display track the approaching Council force. Around her, 15 ships maintained formation in the shadow of Mars's largest moon. They were officially a training squadron, ships and crews that didn't exist in any public records. "They're moving exactly as predicted," reported Commander Jackson from the sensor station. "Single formation, direct approach to the orbital platforms. They're not even scanning for additional contacts." Santos nodded. The Council's tactical doctrine was apparently as rigid as their diplomacy. Overwhelming force applied directly to the most obvious target. It probably worked well against species that followed the same rules. "Signal the platforms to begin evacuation," she ordered, "and send word to Admiral Chen. The Council has taken the bait." Tixlan's confidence began to waver as his force approached the Mars orbital platforms. The human defenders were not responding as expected. Instead of powering up weapons and shields in a defensive posture, the platforms were launching escape pods and shuttles. The humans were abandoning their most important military base without a fight. "War Commander," his tactical officer called out, "I'm detecting movement from behind the 4th moon. Multiple contacts approaching fast." The display updated to show 15 human ships emerging from concealment. They were smaller than his escorts, moving in a loose formation that violated every principle of military tactics, but they were moving fast, accelerating at rates that should have been impossible for ships their size. 15 ships against 50. Tixlan muttered. "Have they lost their minds?" Captain Santos watched the Council formation begin to turn toward her fleet. The alien ships moved like a parade formation, precise and predictable, beautiful in a way, but completely wrong for actual combat. "All ships, this is Resolute," she transmitted. "Execute Pattern 7. Show them what human tactics look like." The Third Fleet scattered like a school of fish sensing a predator. 3 ships dove toward Mars's atmosphere, using the planet's gravity well to slingshot around at impossible angles. 4 more accelerated straight toward the Council formation before splitting apart at the last second. The remaining 8 ships seemed to disappear entirely. Tixlan watched his tactical display with growing confusion. The human ships were moving in patterns that made no sense. They accelerated when they should have retreated, split up when they should have concentrated, and seemed to ignore basic physics in some of their maneuvers. "Sir," his weapons officer called out, "target lock is impossible. They're changing direction too rapidly for our tracking systems." That was when the UES Indomitable dropped out of hyperspace behind Earth's moon, bringing the First Fleet with her. Admiral Chen studied her tactical display with satisfaction. Tixlan's force was exactly where intelligence had predicted it would be, focused entirely on the Mars platforms and scattered across several thousand kilometers of space, trying to track Santos's ships. "Admiral," called her tactical officer, "we have clean firing solutions on their command ships." "Not yet," Chen replied. "Let's give Captain Santos a chance to demonstrate human ingenuity first." The first Council ship died when the UES Defiant emerged from Mars's upper atmosphere at nearly 20% of light speed. The human destroyer had used the planet's gravity well to accelerate far beyond safe limits, trading structural integrity for velocity. It slammed into the Council cruiser's flank like a kinetic projectile, tearing through shields and armor as if they were paper. The second ship fell to a coordinated missile strike from vessels that had seemed to vanish, but were actually hiding in Mars's debris field, using stealth technology that Council sensors couldn't detect. "This is impossible," Tixlan said, watching his formation dissolve into chaos. "How are they doing this?" His question was answered when 3 human ships appeared to ram straight into his defensive line, only to split apart at the last second into dozens of smaller craft. What had looked like 3 ships were actually 9, using modular designs that could separate and recombine in space. The Council's superior technology meant nothing when they couldn't predict where their enemies would be or what they would do. Next, Admiral Chen waited until the Council formation was completely disrupted before giving the order to attack. The First Fleet emerged from behind Earth's moon like a hammer falling on an anvil. catching Tixlan's scattered ships between two human forces. The battle lasted 18 minutes. When it was over, 23 Council ships were destroyed or disabled. Tixlan's own flagship limped away with its engines barely functional and its weapons offline. The remaining Council ships retreated in complete disorder, some of them firing at shadows as they fled. "Admiral," Captain Santos reported from the Resolute, "enemy survivors are withdrawing beyond the heliopause. Should we pursue?" Chen considered it. The smart military decision would be to let them go, to avoid escalating the conflict. But looking at her tactical display, seeing how completely they had outfought a supposedly superior force, she felt something she hadn't expected. Hunger. "Pursue them," she ordered. "But don't destroy them. I want survivors to carry word back to the Council about what they've seen here." As the human fleets began their pursuit, Chen opened a channel to Earth Command. General Morrison appeared on her screen, his face carefully neutral despite what he had just witnessed. "Congratulations, Admiral," he said, "though I suspect this is only the beginning." "Yes, sir," Chen replied. The Council thought they were dealing with 50 ships and primitive technology. Time to show them how wrong they were. "The other fleets are ready?" "Third and fourth fleets are already moving to their assigned positions. The fifth fleet will deploy once we've finished here." "And General, Project Prometheus is ahead of schedule." Morrison nodded slowly. "Then God help us all. Because after today, the entire galaxy is going to want us dead." Tixlan sat in his damaged command chair, watching the tactical display show human ships pursuing his retreating forces. Around him, his officers worked frantically to keep basic systems operational. The humans could have destroyed them all, but they had chosen not to. The insult was almost worse than total defeat would have been. "War Commander," his communications officer called out. "We're intercepting human transmissions." "What are they saying?" The officer hesitated. "Sir, they're discussing construction schedules for 12 new shipyards, recruitment drives across 30 colony worlds, and something called Project Prometheus. The technical specifications, sir, some of this technology is beyond our current understanding." Tixlan closed his eyes. The Council's intelligence had been catastrophically wrong. Humanity hadn't built one secret navy. They had built multiple fleets hidden across dozens of systems, using technology that shouldn't exist. And if the intercepted transmissions were accurate, what they had just faced was only the beginning. "Set course for Concordia Prime," he ordered. "Maximum speed. The Council needs to know what we're really dealing with." Behind them, human ships continued their pursuit, not to destroy, but to demonstrate. The message was clear. Earth's children had grown up, and they were no longer content to hide in their home system. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their complete refusal to fight the way everyone else expected them to. High Arbitrator Nexaval stared at the holographic display showing the aftermath of the Mars engagement. 23 Council ships destroyed or crippled. A strike force that should have easily overwhelmed humanity's entire military had been routed by forces that, according to their intelligence, should not have existed. "Explain to me," he said slowly, "how our intelligence was so completely wrong." Intelligence Director Kelvin shuffled through his data pads nervously. "High Arbitrator, all of our sources confirmed the same information. 50 ships maximum primitive technology, no significant defenses. And yet War Commander Tixlan reports facing over 60 vessels using technology he couldn't identify, weapons that shouldn't work, and tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare." The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been in progress for 6 hours. Around the Great Hall, representatives from 12 species debated, argued, and demanded explanations that no one could provide. "The humans are cheating," declared Councillor Vextar of the Hegemony. "No species achieves this level of coordination without proper command protocols. No military force operates effectively without standardized equipment and doctrine." "Perhaps," Nexval replied. "That is exactly why they are so effective." The recordings from Tixlan's surviving ships played on the main display. Human vessels that split apart in the middle of battle, ships accelerating beyond safe limits to use themselves as kinetic weapons. Weapons that appeared to be improvised from industrial equipment but somehow penetrated Council shields. "They're not fighting like a military," observed Councillor Kethmar. "They're fighting like criminals," Pirates, revolutionaries. And it's working, Nexaval said grimly, which means we need a new approach. The decision was made to deploy the Iron Phalanx, 200 ships under Fleet Admiral Kethmar's direct command. The plan was simple and elegant. Establish a blockade at Wolf 359, the primary hyperspace route between human space and the galactic core. Cut them off, force them back to their home system, and demonstrate Council superiority through overwhelming numbers. It was a good plan. It might even have worked against any other species in the galaxy. Commander James Wright studied the tactical projection in the cramped command center of the UES Audacity. Around him, his staff planned what military textbooks would probably classify as collective suicide. 200 ships, he said thoughtfully. That's significantly more than we faced at Mars. Yes, sir, replied Lieutenant Commander Park from the intelligence station. But they're spread across 3 systems in a blockade formation. Standard Council doctrine calls for mutual support between defensive positions. Wright nodded. Council military doctrine was elegant, logical, and completely predictable. They established strong positions and forced their enemies to attack where they were strongest. It worked well against species that followed similar tactical principles. Humans, however, had never been particularly interested in fighting fair. Signal all ships, Wright ordered. We're implementing the Hydra Protocol. Every ship for itself, maximum chaos. Primary objective is to make the Council think they're fighting 3 times as many vessels as we actually have. The Audacity was officially a heavy cruiser, though most of her tonnage came from modular cargo pods that could be jettisoned and reconfigured in space. Attached to her hull were 12 civilian vessels that were actually disguised warships, each one capable of independent operation. Sir, called his communications officer. The volunteer fleet is ready. Wright smiled grimly. The volunteer fleet consisted of actual civilian vessels whose crews had decided that transporting supplies to human colonies was less important than shooting at aliens who thought they could dictate terms to Earth's children. Mining ships with military-grade sensors, cargo haulers carrying missile pods, even a luxury liner that had been converted into an electronic warfare platform. Execute Hydra Protocol, Wright ordered. Show them what happens when humans get creative. Fleet Admiral Kethmar commanded the Iron Phalanx from the bridge of the heavy dreadnought Unyielding Resolve. His formation stretched across 3 star systems, 200 ships positioned to intercept any human force attempting to break out of their territory. Sir, his tactical officer reported, we're detecting multiple hyperspace signatures throughout the blockade zone. At least 30 contacts, possibly more. Finally, Kethmar muttered, a proper battle. Signal all ships to maintain formation and prepare for engagement. What happened next would be studied in military academies for decades, assuming any of them survived to conduct the analysis. The human ships didn't attack the blockade. They ignored it entirely. Instead of trying to break through Council lines, human forces scattered across 17 different systems, striking supply depots, communication relays, and isolated outposts. They appeared where they shouldn't be able to go, using hyperspace routes through unstable star systems that no sane navigator would attempt. Sir, Kethmar's communications officer called out, we're receiving distress calls from Outpost 7, the supply depot at Kepler 186, and the relay station at Gliese 667, all under attack simultaneously. Impossible, Kethmar replied. Our intelligence shows only 40 human ships in this entire sector. The attacks appear to be coordinated, sir. And the human ships, they're using weapons we've never seen before. The reports flooded in throughout the next 6 hours, human vessels that reconfigured themselves during battle, turning from cargo haulers into missile platforms in minutes, weapons that appeared to be improvised from mining equipment, but somehow penetrated military-grade shields. Tactics that made no sense but were devastatingly effective. At the supply depot, 3 human ships had somehow convinced the automated defense system that they were friendly vessels delivering supplies. They docked normally, then revealed themselves when their crews began planting explosives throughout the station. At the communication relay, a single human vessel had appeared to surrender, broadcasting distress signals and requesting assistance. When Council ships moved to investigate, the damaged vessel had exploded, taking 2 Council escorts with it in what appeared to be a planned sacrifice. They're fighting like madmen, Kethmar's tactical officer reported. No regard for proper military procedure. No concern for acceptable losses. Sir, they're using crews as expendable assets. Or, Kethmar said slowly, their crews are volunteering for missions that other species would consider suicide. The trap at Proxima Centauri was the final straw. Commander Wright had spent 3 days leading a running battle across 4 systems, drawing Council forces away from their defensive positions. His ships were damaged, his crews exhausted, but he had accomplished his mission. The Iron Phalanx was scattered across half the sector, chasing ghosts and responding to attacks that dissolved before they could be properly engaged. Sir, Lieutenant Commander Park reported, Fleet Admiral Kethmar is approaching with the main force. 60 ships, including 5 dreadnoughts. Perfect, Wright replied. Signal the asteroid field. Time to show them what human engineering can accomplish, with enough explosives and complete disregard for safety regulations. The asteroid field around Proxima Centauri had been a mining operation until 6 months ago. Officially, it had been abandoned due to economic concerns. Unofficially, it had been converted into the largest weapons platform in human space. Mining charges had been repurposed as ship killers. Ore processing equipment had been converted into kinetic projectiles. Freight containers had been fitted with drone swarms that could operate independently for weeks. When Kethmar's force entered the asteroid field in pursuit of Wright's damaged ships, they found themselves in a killing ground that defied every principle of civilized warfare. The asteroids themselves began moving, revealing hidden thrusters and guidance systems. What had appeared to be natural debris turned out to be camouflaged weapons platforms. Cargo containers that had been floating dead in space suddenly erupted with missile swarms and energy weapons. This is impossible, Kethmar said, watching his formation dissolve under fire from enemies that shouldn't exist. Asteroid fields cannot be militarized. The engineering requirements alone, sir, his sensor operator called out. I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout the field. It's not just weapons platforms, sir. They've turned the entire asteroid belt into a single coordinated defensive system. The Iron Phalanx lost 80 ships in 30 minutes. The survivors retreated in complete disorder, leaving behind not just their dead, but their confidence in Council military superiority. As the last Council ships fled beyond the system's edge, Commander Wright opened a channel to Admiral Chen. Admiral, he reported, the Iron Phalanx has been neutralized. The blockade is broken, and we've demonstrated that human territory is not a place where Council fleets can operate safely. Excellent work, Commander, Chen replied. Now comes the interesting part. Intelligence reports that the Council is preparing to deploy weapons they haven't used in over 1,000 years. Planet killers, among other things. It seems we've gotten their attention. Are your people ready for the next phase? Wright looked around his bridge at the faces of men and women who had just fought the impossible and won. They were tired, battered, and absolutely ready to do it again. The emergency session had been running for 18 hours straight. In the Great Hall of Concordia Prime, representatives from 12 species sat in stunned silence as High Arbitrator Nexval read the casualty reports. 3 major fleet actions, 412 ships destroyed or disabled, 16 military installations reduced to debris, and in every engagement, human forces have demonstrated capabilities that our intelligence services insist should not exist. Counselor Vextar of the Hegemony slammed her 3 fists on the table. This is unacceptable. We are the Galactic Council. We have maintained order for 3 centuries. We cannot allow a single primitive species to humiliate us. Primitive? Nexval asked quietly. Counselor, I suggest you review the technical analysis of their weapons. Kinetic projectiles that achieve 97% of light speed. Energy weapons that somehow bypass our shield technology. Ships that reconfigure themselves during battle using modular systems we didn't think possible. The holographic display showed footage from the Proxima Centauri engagement. Council officers watched in horror as human ships seemed to materialize from nowhere, as asteroids revealed themselves to be weapons platforms, as cargo containers transformed into swarms of autonomous fighters. They fight without honor, declared Counselor Kael'Thin of the Collective. No proper formation. No adherence to established combat doctrine. They use civilian vessels as military assets and sacrifice crews for tactical advantage. And it works, said Counselor Kethmar grimly. Every tactic we deploy against them, they counter with something we've never seen before. They adapt faster than our commanders can adjust. It's as if they're fighting an entirely different kind of war. The debate had raged for hours, but everyone knew where it was heading. 3 major fleets destroyed or scattered, human forces operating freely throughout 6-star systems, and reports from the Outer Rim that human vessels had been spotted in territories no council ship had ever explored. There is only one option remaining. High Chancellor Vextar finally said, "We must deploy the Extinction Fleet." The hall fell silent. The Extinction Fleet was a weapon of last resort. 40 planet-killer vessels held in reserve for threats to galactic civilization itself. In over a millennium, they had never been deployed against a living species. "High Chancellor," Nexaval said carefully, "the deployment of planet-killers against inhabited worlds. It has been over 1,000 years since such weapons were authorized. And in over 1,000 years we have never faced a threat like this," Vextar replied. "The humans have demonstrated that conventional military force cannot contain them. They show no respect for established authority, no willingness to negotiate, and no understanding of their proper place in galactic civilization." The vote was close, but the authorization passed. Within hours, orders went out to the most secure military installations in Council space. Ancient weapons built in an era when the galaxy was younger and more violent began powering up for the first time in centuries. But while the Council debated the use of planet killers, Admiral Sarah Chen was implementing Operation Wildfire. The operation had been planned for months, contingent on the Council escalating their response to human expansion. Instead of falling back to defend Earth, Chen had decided to demonstrate exactly how far human influence had spread throughout the galaxy. "Signal all fleet commanders," she ordered from the bridge of the Indomitable. "Operation Wildfire is now active. Primary objectives are Council military infrastructure. Secondary objectives are any installation that supports their ability to project force beyond their core territories." The response was immediate and devastating. In the Vega system, the Third Fleet emerged from hyperspace directly inside the orbital defense perimeter of Starbase Omega. The Council's largest military depot, supposedly impregnable behind multiple shield arrays and defense platforms, found itself under attack from vessels that had somehow bypassed every early warning system. At Kepler 442, the Fifth Fleet engaged the fortress station at Bastion Prime. The massive installation was designed to control hyperspace routes throughout the sector, its shields powerful enough to withstand bombardment from an entire fleet. The humans didn't attack the shields. They attacked the planet below. Admiral Chen herself led the assault on Bastion Prime, bringing 60 ships against a station that had never been successfully attacked in 200 years of operation. The battle began normally enough, with human ships engaging the station's defensive systems, while Council reinforcements rushed to respond. Then the UES Retribution, a heavy cruiser carrying experimental weapons, fired a single projectile at the planet's surface. The projectile was small, barely larger than a torpedo. But it carried something that Council science had declared impossible: a microsingularity, a tiny black hole held in magnetic containment and designed to destabilize gravitational fields. When it struck the planet's surface, the effects were immediate and catastrophic. The planet's gravitational field fluctuated wildly, causing massive tidal forces that began tearing the surface apart. More importantly, the gravitational tethers that held Bastion Prime in stable orbit began to fail. "Impossible," whispered the station commander, as his massive fortress began falling toward the planet's surface. "They cannot have weaponized black holes. The technology doesn't exist." "Sir," his tactical officer called out, "massive structural failure throughout the station. Artificial gravity is failing, life support is compromised, and the main reactor is showing critical instability." The evacuation of Bastion Prime took 6 hours. Council ships worked frantically to rescue personnel from a station that was slowly tearing itself apart as it fell through an increasingly unstable gravitational field. By the time the last shuttle escaped, the fortress was a twisted wreck tumbling through the planet's upper atmosphere. But the evacuation had provided exactly what Admiral Chen needed: chaos and distraction. "Boarding teams, go," she ordered. While Council ships focused on rescue operations, human special forces infiltrated the station's core sections. They weren't there to plant explosives or capture prisoners. They were there for something far more valuable: information. The intelligence seized from Bastion Prime's databanks was beyond price. Complete specifications for Council military technology, the locations of every major installation in 12 star systems, production schedules for new ships, and most importantly, the deployment orders for something called the Extinction Fleet. Admiral, reported Captain Martinez from the boarding team, we've got everything. Ship designs, defensive plans, even their contingency protocols for dealing with species-level threats. Species-level threats? Chen asked. Yes, ma'am. According to these files, they're planning to deploy planet-killer weapons against Earth. 40 ships, each one capable of sterilizing an entire world. Chen felt a cold anger settle in her chest. The Council's response to humanity's expansion was genocide. Total extermination, not just of human military forces, but of the entire species. Download everything, she ordered, and prepare a special transmission for Earth Command. I think it's time we showed the Council what humans do when someone threatens our home. The intelligence from Bastion Prime revealed the scope of Council military power throughout the galaxy. But it also revealed something else, how limited their imagination had become. 3 centuries of unchallenged dominance had made them predictable, bureaucratic, and utterly unprepared for opponents who refused to follow established patterns. Over the next 72 hours, human forces struck 47 targets across 6 star systems. Military depots, communication relays, shipyards, and research stations all fell to coordinated attacks that demonstrated just how thoroughly humans had infiltrated territories the Council thought secure. Sir, Intelligence Director Calvin reported to High Arbitrator Nexval, the scope of human military operations is far beyond what we believed possible. They're not just striking randomly. Every target has been carefully selected to maximize damage to our ability to coordinate fleet movements. How many ships are they deploying? Nexval asked. That's the problem, sir. We can't get an accurate count. Human ships appear to reconfigure between engagements, changing their sensor signatures and tactical profiles. What we identify as destroyer-class vessels in one battle appear as heavy cruisers in another. The holographic display showed the pattern of attacks across human-controlled space and beyond. Red dots marked successful strikes against Council installations. Blue dots showed human fleet movements. Green dots indicated territories where human ships had been detected but not engaged. Sir, Calvin continued, the green dots represent the real problem. We're detecting human vessels in star systems we didn't know they could reach. Some of these locations are beyond the galactic rim, in territories no Council ship has ever explored. Nexval studied the display with growing unease. The humans weren't just defending their territory or even expanding it. They were operating throughout the galaxy as if they owned it, striking where they pleased and retreating to sanctuaries that Council forces couldn't find. What about the Extinction Fleet? He asked. Deploying as ordered, sir. 40 ships, all armed with planet-killer weapons. Estimated arrival at Earth in 72 hours. And you're confident this will end the human threat? 1 year had passed since the Galactic Council issued their ultimatum to humanity. High Arbitrator Nexval stood before the emergency assembly on Concordia Prime, holding a datapad that contained statistics no Council member wanted to hear. 47 military installations destroyed or abandoned, he read aloud. Trade routes disrupted across 6 sectors. 3 member species have formally requested separate diplomatic arrangements with humanity. And our intelligence services report that human vessels have been detected in over 200 star systems, including territories we believed were uninhabitable. The Great Hall was quieter than a tomb. Representatives from 12 species sat in their assigned seats, but many of those seats were empty. The Kethri had withdrawn their ambassador, after human forces disabled their primary fleet base. The Veltar were threatening to leave the Council entirely unless something was done about the human problem. How is this possible? Demanded Councillor Vextar. One species, barely capable of interstellar travel a decade ago, has brought the entire Council to its knees. High Chancellor Tixalon, recently promoted after the complete failure of the Iron Phalanx, gestured to the holographic display showing the current tactical situation. Red dots marked confirmed human fleet positions. Blue dots showed probable human activity. Green dots indicated systems where human presence was suspected but unconfirmed. The map was more green and blue than anything else. The problem, Tixalon said grimly, is that we never understood what we were fighting. We assumed humans followed the same limitations as every other species. Single homeworld, limited resources, traditional military hierarchy. We were wrong about everything. The display zoomed in on the outer rim of the galaxy, showing sensor readings that made no sense, massive energy signatures in star systems that should have been empty, construction activities on worlds that Council science had declared uninhabitable, fleet movements through regions of space where no sane navigator would risk a journey. "Sir," called the intelligence coordinator, "we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Chen. It's being broadcast on all frequencies throughout Council space." "Put it through," Nexaval ordered, though he suspected he didn't want to hear what the human admiral had to say. The holographic display flickered, and Admiral Sarah Chen appeared. But something was different about this transmission. She wasn't standing on the bridge of a ship. She was standing in what appeared to be a massive construction facility, with the curve of a planet visible through transparent aluminum windows behind her. "High Arbitrator Nexval," Chen said, her voice carrying clearly across the silent chamber. "I thought it was time for a more detailed conversation about humanity's place in the galaxy." The camera view pulled back, revealing the true scope of what lay behind her. The construction facility stretched for hundreds of kilometers, filled with ships unlike anything in Council space. They were larger than Council dreadnoughts, built with design principles that seemed to ignore basic engineering limitations. "This is Shipyard Complex Alpha," Chen continued, "located approximately 2,000 light-years beyond the galactic rim. One of 12 such facilities currently in operation." Several Council members gasped audibly. The location alone should have been impossible. No species had ever established permanent installations beyond the galaxy's edge. The energy requirements, the resource logistics, the simple challenge of surviving in the void between galaxies. It couldn't be done. "As you can see," Chen said, "we've been busy. The ships you're looking at represent the first production run of our deep space combat fleet. Each vessel is approximately 3 times the mass of your largest dreadnought and incorporates technology you've never encountered." The display changed to show technical schematics that made Council engineers recoil in shock. Ships powered by controlled microsingularities, weapons that manipulated fundamental forces, defensive systems that existed partially outside normal spacetime. "But ships are only part of the story," Chen continued. "Let me show you what else we've accomplished." The transmission shifted to show a star map that encompassed not just the local galaxy, but neighboring galaxies as well. Hundreds of systems marked with human symbols, trade routes spanning impossible distances, colonies on worlds that existed in conditions no known species could survive. "Humanity has established permanent settlements in 47 star systems beyond the galactic rim," Chen explained. "We've made contact with 36 species unknown to the Council. We've developed technology that allows us to travel distances your scientists consider impossible. And we've built an infrastructure that makes your entire civilization look like a single city-state." High Arbitrator Nexaval felt something he had never experienced in 3 centuries of life. True fear. Not fear of death or defeat, but fear of absolute irrelevance. The scale of what Chen was showing them reduced the entire Galactic Council to a minor regional power. "How?" he asked aloud, though he knew the transmission was one way. As if hearing his question, Chen smiled. "You want to know how we did it? The answer is simple. We never accepted your limitations. While you maintained order within the boundaries you'd established, we explored beyond them. While you perfected technology based on principles you understood, we invented technology based on principles we discovered. While you governed the galaxy you knew, we built an empire in the galaxy you feared to explore." The transmission changed again, showing human colonies thriving on worlds that should have been death traps, cities built inside the event horizons of black holes, using gravitational manipulation technology that Council physics declared impossible, research stations operating in the quantum foam between dimensions. "Every challenge you told us was insurmountable. We treated it as an engineering problem," Chen continued. "Every boundary you said was absolute, we found a way to cross. Every law of physics you said was unbreakable, we learned to bend." Councillor Kethmar leaned forward in his seat. "What do they want?" he whispered. "Total conquest? The destruction of all other species? What is their end goal?" Chen's image seemed to look directly at him. "Our goal? Growth. Exploration. The endless expansion of human potential and knowledge. We don't want to rule your species or destroy your civilization. We simply want you to understand that your time as the dominant power in this galaxy is over." The display showed the current positions of human fleets. Not just the ships that had fought Council forces, but hundreds of others scattered throughout the galaxy and beyond. Deep space exploration vessels, colony ships heading toward distant stars, research fleets investigating phenomena that Council science had never discovered. This is not conquest, Chen explained. This is evolution. Humanity has outgrown the limitations that constrain every other known species. We've learned to thrive in environments you consider impossible, to solve problems you consider unsolvable, to achieve things you consider impossible. The transmission paused, and when Chen spoke again, her voice carried a note of something that might have been pity. The Galactic Council's time is ending, she said. Not because we're destroying you, but because you've made yourselves irrelevant. While you spent 3 centuries maintaining the status quo, we spent 1 decade rewriting the rules of what's possible. High Chancellor Tixlan stood up abruptly. Signal the extinction fleet, he ordered. Full deployment, all 40 vessels. If they think they can intimidate us with displays of superior technology, the extinction fleet no longer exists, Chen's voice interrupted. Though the transmission should have been one way. We disabled all 40 planet-killer vessels 6 months ago. The crews are unharmed and have been provided with transportation back to Council space, along with complete technical specifications for the weapons they were carrying. The silence in the chamber was absolute. You see, Chen continued, we've been monitoring your communications, tracking your fleet movements, and analyzing your technology since this conflict began. Not to attack you, but to understand you. And what we've learned is that you're not enemies to be defeated. You're simply limited. The final part of the transmission showed something that broke the last of the Council's confidence. A star map showing the positions of every Council fleet, every defensive installation, every secret weapon in their arsenal, all of it known, cataloged, and clearly understood by human intelligence services. We know where all of your ships are, Chen said simply. We know what weapons you possess. We know your strategic plans, your contingency protocols, and your emergency procedures. We've been inside your most secure installations, copied your most classified data, and demonstrated our ability to operate freely throughout your territory. She paused, letting the implications sink in. But we haven't used that knowledge to destroy you. We could have eliminated the entire Council fleet 6 months ago. We could have seized control of your worlds, dismantled your government, and occupied your territory. Instead, we've chosen to show you the future. The transmission began to end, but Chen had one final message. The galaxy is vast beyond your comprehension, she said. There are wonders among the stars that your species will never discover because you're too afraid to look for them. There are challenges that will require cooperation between species you've never encountered.